Okay, let's begin. Hello, everyone. Hopefully, my voice is loud and clear. The weather of the world changes. No one knows how long they will be here. The title of tonight's episode and the conception that graces this moment is the edges of our internal universes are connected. This is a finding of mine. It's a very interesting finding because I had a geometrical opening to this realization. Sometimes it's words that move your world, change your world. Sometimes it is actions that change your world, and sometimes it is just the magnificence of design. Because we have a unique DNA, a unique biological structure, there is a reaction. You see, it's as if we're not just our free will, we are what our free will is occurring through. And what it is occurring through is a relationship between the land in itself, in some sense. You see, that's what a mind is when an object is aware, it is objective, therefore rendering it beyond the objective. The only reason we can, in some sense, move around and our intelligence functions with acknowledging objects is because we behind our eyes we sit upon a higher dimensional view on it. What that means is it's as if like you might not think for a second when you want to grab a glass of water, when you want to grab a cup from the cupboard and in some sense drink some water. It's an instantaneous thing. You don't doubt, you don't sit there planning for many years. And yet many human activities, especially those for survival, require certain complexities. And I wondered, it's as if we have truly deviated from nature, because it is not only nature that brings a sort of gratification to our life. It's no longer enough to just be with the world. We have to build the world. And so we have become builders. Ideological builders. Something unique happened. After idol worship, man leaped into idea worship. What that means is at first we were trying to find our truth. And let me tell you where it's heading. Let me tell you what I feel the next 200, 400 years their metaphysics is going to be occupied. It's going to be occupied with, in some sense, finding emptiness. Imagine you think an object is the ultimate truth. You think that an object is the source of the world. They take that object away from you. They have taken the source of the world away from you. Therefore, if there is something that remains, it surpasses the source. It surpasses the observance. The observer surpasses the object of observance. So now Mr.Within is saying, because we moved on to idea worship, now we're at an era we have to transcend the subjective component of the moment. And you don't really transcend it. There isn't like a heavenly dimension you can fly to as long as you're incarnate. The thing about an incarnate existence is that you are, believe it or not, navigating through a vehicle. You're navigating through an elemental vehicle. But what navigates is awake in certain moments. That means for me, sleep is still a fascinating thing. I don't sleep some nights. Some nights I am kind of pulled. I am pulled by a sort of unique vision of importance that I kind of stay up and share these talks. But every person's life, they hear a certain melody. Your ears are designed to hear certain voices, and certain voices, regardless of what they say, their words will be uncertain to you, because it is experience that authorizes the linguistic realm. Without us having an experience of an object, language would not have a basic reference point to begin from. We needed our lack of sight. We needed our savageness, because now we have moved beyond it. It's as if, like, right now, think about it, our civilization. When I say civilization, whoever you're listening, you might not realize it, but you're a member of a 4 billion year old ancient pattern. that's occurring on the surface of this earth. You may have not noticed it, you know. The enlightened and nihilist people, I say there's two traps in philosophy: the nihilistic trap, which means you're seeing at the extreme of emptiness, and in some sense enlightenment trap, where you're trying to attain the ultimate infinitude, you know, the ultimate eternity or immortality. Kind of like how in Lord of the Rings there was one ring to rule them all. That for certain people there's one sort of enlightenment to see the world in, you know. In other words, the Rubik's cube can be moved in many ways. Yet it is only in a certain way it activates. And so life becomes more than our internal expectation on it. This is the most crucial thing to understand, because the children of this world have a power they won't realize until they lose. That's kind of how this world works. Before you suffer, you have no idea suffering is coming. Suffering appears as an instantaneous signal, or if your intellectual capacity to articulate the moment progresses, you can see suffering before, hundreds of years before you were born. You can see certain errors and glitches in the human system of kind of how conception has entered our minds, and we sparked it like the caveman. This is what people don't realize. And I knew deep down, since my youth, I knew there was something that was here that could not be said. I knew that the mind could not see what was seeing it. Every person experiences when they open their eyes, or when I say their eyes, think of like your sensory data. We have different types of sight. We have a sight that is oriented to the objective phenomena, and we have a sight that's oriented to the subjective phenomena. The subjective phenomena is very easier for thoughts to pass from one moment to another. But biological phenomena has to listen and is limited to the laws of its world. So what that really means is that on some level, we can change our minds, but we cannot change our world. And that is our power. The power of humanity, the power that will be generate the momentum of the vision of the future generations, is what we leave behind. This is such an important concept, because what we leave behind is not just physical resources for the future generations. We are leaving behind for them palaces of architecture, literally cities of great architecture ideologically. This is what children don't realize, and Mr. Within is telling every human being, be aware of this. There isn't just people living among us on this earth. There's ideology. There's ideology set loose, and these ideologies, once they take control of groups of people, they begin devouring their imaginations by forcing them to see reality in a box. Therefore, truth has become kind of like a too good to be true kind of idea in nowadays. In ancient times, truth was their lantern in the sky. They would run after it, trying to make sure it never goes out. But nowadays, truth is no longer a state. That's the biggest realization I got, because all spirituality leads towards, it's pointing you to an alteration, to like something with your state of how your being is changing. It has nothing to do with what you have done and what you will do and what you are doing. It is an inner, as if like right now you don't realize it, but your mind is how in some sense your consciousness is holding an instrument in another dimension, and based on your vision it begins to play. So for me, it has to do with attention, because it's kind of like you can't pinpoint attention. Eventually, at some point, the mind will be so overloaded with data, it will revert. And when it will revert, it has a choice. You see, it's just not that the external environment changes the importance of the choice. The inner environment changes the importance of the choice. What is it that we see? What is this phenomena called, the lovers' quarrel? In some sense, lovers, human beings from different parts of the world or from wherever, they are pulled to existing as the same moment. Marriage was back in the day a kind of divine concept, but it was reduced, so it was never for society. It was a ritual on the world. It was like 2 drops of rain on your windshield becoming one giant raindrop. An immensity and intelligence that only the collective can understand. And what do I see, ladies and gentlemen? I see that any person who is alone runs after the world. And any person who is not alone forgets the world. And that is the nature, that is the dance. Me and you have opened our eyes in a world that changes not only in an atomic way, it changes in a linguistic way. Sometimes if you notice in these thoughts that I say, the only way I can jump into a sort of animated force of its reality is that I have to let go of my past. Do you know, if I wanted to hold on to my past, I would in some sense be left behind from my own honest evolution of sight. You see, the thing is, attention, the more you have an individual notion of yourself, it becomes important where your attention is. Have you noticed? It's like when you realize you're physically gonna die, you're like, holy shit, what should this physical attention and brain of mine pay attention to, before I die, for example. And of course, I'm not trying to be here rude to the notion of notion of death. Death is a door to the wise, but to the unwise, it is a wall. And there's many moments. I can't tell you. It's as if we're designed that way. We are designed at some point in our conceptual analysis for the engine to turn off and listen to nature. Life is strange because the sense of the character emerges in society. So this is the true nature, guys. Many philosophers have wondered throughout history. It has been just pretty much one of those big questions we ask as human beings. That is man's nature good or evil? And we realize nature was here before good and evil were concepts. That is the truth. The truth is there is a natural world here that no character in a story can walk in. It is not for characters. We are moments of evolution which under one banner call ourselves humanity. But this humanity is our own flame. That means it's as if the emptiness of the cosmos looked at the human being and shouted. It shouted, same as it shouted at our ancestors, it will shout at our grandchildren. And it will say, oh human being, why do you carry the lantern of history? Why do you carry the beacons of the past? And in that moment, the conscious mind will look at emptiness and will say, because freedom is to dance. That is the value of life. If you notice, karma has to do with a sort of judgment system. So think of it this way, that the child's mind, like literally a child is born, what's happening on an intelligence level? Mr.Within finds that the mind of the child is being the environment. The child's mind is starting from a static acceptance of selfhood. This is why we will always be superior to the moving realm. We are the field of intelligence that the various particles of our life move in. We're not just the particles. We're not just stories in the void that only saw themselves. We are not alone. But this doesn't mean that there is civilizations beyond our skies. It means there are civilizations behind our eyes, for where does their meaning arise? Tell me, from which sky does the light of consciousness shine? You see, it's a rhythm. That's what I'm trying to tell people. It's like, stop reading books. Life is a rhythmic activation. That means sometimes a person who reads, I don't want to say stop reading books, that's too intense. The educational system would be like, what the fuck did this guy say? And Mr. Within will roar. I will roar at the past because I'm not afraid of the past. The moment I wasn't afraid of the future, I could not be afraid of the past. It was a weird state of mind. It was a weird archetype. It's the archetype of the resurrection of a new past because of a new future. You see, you think of it this way. I want you to think like the movie Airbender. Of course, many filmmakers will say, "All right, okay, I see what the creators did there," but at the same time, it's a film where it is suggesting one of the most ancient arts that somehow it is kept in like fantasy and lore, lore, lore. So our civilization doesn't have only a history of real stories entering the minds of people. We have a history of unreal stories entering the mind of the people, especially if you are wearing a secular suit. What I mean by that is most people are kind of stepping out of as if a comet hit Earth and it made a hole, it made a dent. And this comet or whatever that made this hole is climbing out. That's my point. You're climbing out of how the world was spoon fed to you. And you can only do this by realizing your archetypes are the way out. Carl Jung left a kinda like he couldn't save the world, but at least he left a map. A map that only the mind can find. The body cannot find it. There's many treasures that the body can find, you know? For example, the whole reproductive momentum of our physical bodies is based on pleasure. Do you see? Isn't it fascinating that a moment of creation, you know, it tends to begin from a state where it is creativity from both sides, not resistance. This is why it's as if the dancers have a unique intelligence, whoever it is. Any child on this earth who's been moved towards dancing, me personally, like, I'm not a dancer, but I've had moments where, like, there was this time I was like cleaning, you know, like my room and my space. And as I was doing it, the way I was kind of cleaning my room was I was throwing my clothing in the air and then catching it. And somehow, while doing this, I began playing with the shirts that I would throw in the air and somehow catch it. A kind of dance of space, a dance of sudden movement stability, sudden movement stability, sudden movement stability. And any person's mind who goes through certain intense experiences, you don't understand. In all your failures, there's a hidden gift. It is an authorization to see more about the future. You have data now. This is why no one can really fail. Anytime you do something, that energetic expression has a value. Now, the issue of our world, especially why many people are like, holy shit, art is dying and we're not doing much about it. It's like, what does that mean? That means the same way it was okay for our species to prohibit, to allow forests with rare species of, with rare animals and, you know, kind of like about to be extinct species. Like, what I'm trying to say is that we had to blinden ourselves so through savageness we could survive. We had to avoid suffering and really look for heaven, because what would evolution be? It's as if, think of evolution as an internal urge, not per se an external. For me, the phenomena of language is great proof. You know, that means my if somebody says, how do you know there's an inner reality? I'll tell you, language is a physical proof of it, because it's as if a thought is like a word not said yet, a sound not made yet. Okay, so it has subtle design, but it doesn't have manifest value. This is a very important concept to acknowledge. That certain things, the more manifest something, the more the universe is like, hey man, I'm going to give you stuff, but at the same time realize you're made of stuff, and all stuff changes, and we're like, holy shit, universe, what are you doing to us? It's like, why, universe, why are you being cruel, man? Just make one heaven and make everybody relax. You know, it's like, what is this kind of dance of lifetimes. You know, some yogis, they were known to incarnate 7,500 apocalypses. Do you know what that means? That means literally the person has been, the consciousness of the being has been projecting the same game for a long time. And of course, everybody has a different excitement, because if we entertain the notion of an inner child, what that means is because you have memories of your childhood throughout the day or any moment of your life, your psychology is not just inspired by images of just the present moment. That means it doesn't matter how much you're like Eckhart Tolle or Muji or all these new age gurus being like, be here and now. It's like, let me tell you, the only peace you will find is that you will see the world is in pieces. I find the ultimate resolution of enlightenment is that we realize our heaven was actually, forgive me for saying this, but another world's hell. And that heaven was again another world's hell. And that hell was another world's heaven. And so the archetypes move on. It's kind of like, imagine you're walking in the streets in New York and it's like very quiet and you're the only one walking in the streets, and suddenly you see these giant, let's say a black and white dragon, you know, without wings, just like kind of like these giant lines moving in the sky. It is, there's the concept, there's this word I like, which is self-illumination. Because it makes you not only wonder about a self-illumination, but you wonder about what is this world doing. It's as if who is driving the ideological values of our world. And for a long time I trusted the environment. But let me tell you, this is the cool thing about human life. Your world will betray you. Your sense of self may betray you. But your moment, it watches. It watches as if eternity was untouched. As if there's a witness. This was the word. This is the best word for it. And what is a witness? A witness means someone who is not directly involved, but they exist in the presence of a certain moment. And you, dear human being, regardless of what belief you have on yourself, you exist on this planet as a moment of intelligence. Now, Mr. Within is asking everybody, like, just check it out. Everybody has a unique DNA, implying that if we had a model for the mind, that our thoughts are like waves being received by a sort of antenna. I'm not joking. Our intelligence is kind of like an antenna that expresses and receives at times. Another kind of more like a medieval metaphor I use is, is that your mind is like a sword and shield. So when I'm speaking to you right now, you don't move the sword unless you know what you're doing. You don't even take out the sword unless you know what you're doing. That means don't ever get angry unless you have a control over the grip of that anger. You see, this is something I'm learning in life. The biggest challenge for me, I don't want to say biggest challenge, but something that I had, a sort of field of burning coal that I had to walk through, was to stop constantly trying to capture the moment in a story. This is the greatest revelation, the greatest teaching that the gods of loneliness and solitude revealed. That means I've had moments in this mind, this world, where I was literally with people, like with family and friends, but in that instant, I felt a loneliness which didn't have to do with my life. Because the moment you live an artificial life, the moment you actually are not yourself, you will feel you are living someone else's life. And that is one of the worst feelings. That is the worst feeling I've had. So what that means is the only way out of that feeling is to realize you're not a thought. You're the commanding experience. You are the commander within. You are the commands of your universal sector manifest before we even had language or before you were named. The cosmos looked at itself. For that is where the poets of the ancient mystics took us. They took us to the revolution of thought and matter as the moment. It's incredibly fascinating, I am telling you. It's like we have wings that we don't know about, but it's our subjective life which has been occurring since day one. We have just been unaware of it, because here's the thing: the more what you see in front of your eyes is created. What appears behind your eyes, you are the creator of. That means behind your eyes, you're the god of your thoughts, which means your attention, where the sense of you emerges from, is the core design. It's very hard to speak about emptiness. Certain doors of the mind open when you let go. Certain doors of the mind open when there's a passionate approach. And passion can never arise if you're not honest. There's no such thing. You can't fake passion. You can fake an activity, but you cannot fake the vision. There is always a vision behind your eyes that is the starlight in your sky. We breathe as the origin of the moment, do we not? So anyways, I want you to see, here's an incredible metaphor that just has become apparent to me. I gotta share this. So guys, this pretty much explains the title. The edges of our internal universes are connected. External universe, imagine, just entertain me as a philosopher of the moment with this concept. Okay. Right now as I'm speaking to you, I am speaking in an external reality. Okay? You exist in this external reality as well. I exist in this external reality as well. And we are communicating in one world. So I want to say that in front of our eyes, I acknowledge there's only Earth here. There's nothing else here. It is just matter. We're giving matter permission to be alone on stage. Okay, that's the external reality. So pretty much the greatest vision of external matter is design. So I'll get into that later about when geometry comes in. Imagine you and every person on the planet for a second just picked up a pen and went on a piece of paper, and on that piece of paper they wrote a story. They wrote a story about the world, an honest story about what they see as the world, for example. We would see that in those stories, they will all start differently. Or what would I say? They will all overall be different, because everyone's eyes sees something different. So all the characters in all these stories that 8 billion people on this planet right now have written, imagine, the background, the context of these stories, Mr. Within is saying that is the same. I am saying that Carl Jung understood this. Pretty much this is another way of saying the collective unconscious. I'm poetic about it. I say it is the edge of the world. Yeah, That's enlightenment. It's the edge. It's the edge of thought. It's not. It has nothing to do with your physical reality. That means it doesn't matter if you're in a cave meditating, or if you have a cup of green tea and sitting on your porch. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't have to do with the physical reality, because from the beginning you are opening this rug in front of you that you're walking on, which is the idea of the self, which is the journey of the self. Greatest advice is listen to nature, because you if you want to command something, let's say you're a human being, and of course I'm not saying you command people. I'm saying, you see, it's like you cannot command anyone on this planet, because, to be honest, it's internal, the intention of movement. Right? This is Galileo understood this. Galileo said you cannot teach anyone anything. You got to make them realize it within themselves. Right? Because the ears are closed, because the vision doesn't access the reality. The characters in all the stories will be in one moment, and that moment cannot be defined by any of its parts. So, as if your hand cannot consider itself as the source of intelligence, your brain cannot consider itself as the source, your heart cannot consider itself as the source. It's as if all the purposes of the individual was a collective presence. That's the juice of metaphysics. It has to do with, I guess I gotta bring this into it. You're in an intelligent moment of being. This intelligence is self-expressive. That means your free will localizes you as a sort of embodied self, but your expression is endless. That means it doesn't matter where you're standing, you could go anywhere. So just like how we have legs as human beings, we have potential for relocation, which means that that whatever we think we are as this primal attention, it was comfortable having the external environment change. There was no rebellion. The external environment changed easily. Then the internal environment changed. As if it wasn't first just a sort of apocalypse of the body, but there was an apocalypse for the mind. You can say an apocalypse for the mind is when time and space, their concepts become void suddenly. Or as some poets have said, like snow in the morning melting, like melting snow in the morning sun. In the presence of nature, man realigns his nature. And it's not about choosing sides. The fragmentation of the psyche into the good person and bad person, it's like, how can you know? First of all, we're not computers that are constantly, endlessly analyzing every action. Do you know how much of a person's guilt can be fantasy? Do you know how much of a person's stress and depression could be fantasy? It could have nothing to do with what is actually happening in their moment. Because the mind internally, vertically imagined, is multidimensional. But the body is still moving around horizontal. So the present moment, of course, in some sense, is the intersection of all realities. That means your memories and everything you have ever imagined, and all phenomena, all experiences, their common denominator is the presence of an existence. So I'm saying this is a sort of level of philosophy where man has to wonder, okay, where did our intelligence start from? Did it come from the sky, or did it step out, sprout from the ground? It's an incredible question. It's on some level, of course, we will never know. And I personally don't believe time travel is possible. But not because we can't build the technology. We may build the technology. I just believe we are not one person to have one type of past. So what that means is it's kind of like the argument Heraclitus makes, where Heraclitus says no man can step in the same river twice, and it's not the same man and it's not the same river. Like, what does this dude mean? He's saying that instead of seeing one river and one person, that moment when the person put his foot in the river and then took like lifted his foot out of the river and then put it back in, literally it wasn't the same part of the river, hence his feet hadn't touched the same river, even though we are saying one river, but it hadn't touched the same molecules of water, you know, it hadn't touched the same substance. So you see, it's as if our truths, we can hold them, but they're changing anyways. Experience runs the show, because at most the intellectual thing the mind can do is build a statue of itself. That means it doesn't matter. The idea of God is unknown. The idea of man is known. That moment in the Sistine Chapel when you see Michelangelo has drawn kind of man's finger and God like millimeters like of space between them, keeping it separate. Like, that's what it is. It is what we know. That means there's an effort of modern civilization through conscious knowing to explore the unconscious unknown. That is modern civilization. And it's an honorable vision. That means there's something mighty that comes with the intellect, that it's never a lost soul. It's like it's not neither a found soul, but it's neither a lost soul because it defends itself. You see, that's the thing about the rational mind. If you know where it started, no argument can dismantle the factual position. Because ideas, of course, again have layers. There have been moments where it's strange. You feel more like a moment, the whole moment, rather than just what's in it. That's the wisdom of the void. Because only those who realize space is an opportunity can manifest. We are voices in the abyss, roaming. It's not just star stuff roaming, stardust moving around. We are not just our biology, because if we were our biology, we were never us. So the human conscious mind has stepped into reality as a narrative. Our psychologies are structures of language. And language is various ways the world was exposed to you since your childhood till now. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage against the dying of the light. This is from the poetry of Dylan Thomas. He's saying these lines to his father on his deathbed, intense words. He's saying rage against the dying of the light. That means it doesn't matter how good we get, how cruel we get. It's all about how that one light, 4 billions of years of evolution, and this science project called humanity is here. And we just forget it, and everybody goes into their own bubble of self-gratification. That is destruction. Hedonism is escapism. You cannot look for heaven without forgetting your earth. You cannot bring hell without, in some sense, making the heavens fade. Your attention is you. You is the moment. You are the moment. That is the thing. There's never we are we on an existential level. There's no purpose to life. You're just being what you are. On an experiential level, there is the choice. That means, isn't it hilarious, guys? Don't you find it hilarious that so many things on this planet are out of man's control? That means, like a kid, like a person, like like let's say like a young kid can't go outside in the yard and be like, "Yo, son, get out of here," or like looking at the rain, it's like, "Rain, don't you dare fall." What I'm trying to say is that realities and the permissions they bring. We think reality is a normal place. That is our first mistake. We think a normal can exist in a changing world. Every moment of your life you're changing, and yet you strive to be part of a system where you're valued same as others. This is destruction. Let me tell you, our freedom is void, because freedom means change. And not a lot of people can change. You see, it's as if someone can, if you have external shackles, literally if you had chains, like you were chained like a titan in ancient Greece. This chained titan, the chains could one day break. But the chains of the mind don't break, they must vanish. It is kind of like certain inefficient ideas in your moment of being, they just stop, they vanish. Literally, it's as if your true self is like enters and the perform the ripples of the mind settle. Fearlessly mankind marched into the unknown. It considered itself to be the center of the world. And anytime you consider yourself to be the center of the world, you miss out on what is going out externally. I've personally experienced this a lot. It's kind of like your mind gives you the ability to be multi-local, even though your body is in one dimension. It's kind of strange. It's like I can't say the multidimensionality of the mind per se is just like a parallel reality. In one reality you're combing your hair left, and the other reality you're combing your hair right. Like, I'm not talking about that kind of parallel reality. I'm talking about a kind of multidimensional framework where the drop is the ocean. There is no there. It's like what we find beyond the veil of thought is non-duality. It's not that we find truth. Therefore, our truths end up becoming non-dual based on our finding, not based on what truth really is. It's on some level, it's you better smile when you see chaos, because it means that chaos is going to have a chaos itself. And that chaos is gonna be the birth of a new order. That is the game this cosmos plays. It keeps turning the light switch on and off, on and off, on and off. And so as we're in this room of on and off, on and off, on and off, eventually the intelligence has accustomed to being a new self. Pretty much every day feels like a new day, new day, new day. But what is it that's here? Can energy experience time? You know? It's like if there was literally like, let's say, a swimming pool, but instead of water, there was just glowing, like, let's say, white energy or something. White kind of like, clouds of light. Energy cannot wear a mask. Therefore, man even transcends the energetic. Wow. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Much blessings and namaste.